Copy. I'll keep an eye on it. Do you need this one?
I'll hold on to it just in case. Put it in my pocket.
No, that's why. Perfect time.
Testing. So it's gonna pick it up and go through the speakers too? Okay. That's all you.
I thought I would be drinking the plug water, man. What's that?
Oh, you know what?
No problem.
There is a black-owned water company down here.
We have one that's sponsoring the show now.
Yeah, it's about here. Yeah.
You said
Testing. I think it comes off the speakers. That sounds, I can hear it a little bit. Is that good? It's not very loud, but it's...
That's going up too.
Oh.
Test 1 2.
So the reason why we have that microphone is because after the podcast, we're going to open it up for question and answer as time permits. So make sure you guys are thinking of something to ask Dr. Kimbrough while you're listening. If something sparks your interest.
We don't get tired. Get nervous. All we do is win.
Are we live? We're live. Welcome to the Millionaire Podcast. Man, my name is Charles Oglesby, also known as Todd, Millionaire. Thank you guys all for tuning in. The purpose of this podcast is to share the stories of successful African-American business owners and investors. We want people to know that successful billionaires do exist, and then we also want people to know that business and investing are the true keys to financial success and generational wealth. With me is my amazing co-host, Miss Michelle Welch, all the way from Florida. How you doing?
I am blessed. I'm just happy to be here today.
Happy to be here. You guys are definitely in for a treat. We're continuing to grow this show, and we're continuing to do amazing things. And in my opinion, I think a large influence on this show is our guest today, Dr. Dennis Kimbrough. He is the author of Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. He was born December 29, 1950 in Jersey City, New Jersey. In 1972, he received his BA and MA degrees from the University of Oklahoma. He later earned his PhD in political science at Northwestern University, researching wealth and poverty in underdeveloped countries. And he's also a professor at the Clark Atlanta University here in Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, my brother.
Man, it's amazing
Miss Michelle.
to be here. Mm-hmm. So we always start our show with asking our guests to tell us a little bit more about themselves.
Well, basically, I'm an open book. You said it all. Born in Jersey City. Didn't go back to Jersey since my junior year in college. And I was the first African American after I got my degree from Oklahoma University. Went down to Dallas, Texas to work. I was the first African American in the rotational program for Texas Instruments. Worked there for about a year and a half, and I told my wife, I said, well, you know I want to go ahead and get my terminal degree. And we had one daughter and another daughter on the way, and she said, well, let's do it now while the girls are young. And so I went to Northwestern, got my degree, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Arguably, probably the best advice I was given from my committee chair. He said to me, he said, Dennis, don't look at your dissertation as an obligation for your degree. Look at your dissertation as your first book. And my focus at that time, and still is, well, was wealth and poverty among underdeveloped countries. And after I got my degree, I turned to my wife and I said, I know exactly my first book. And she says, what is it? I said, don't want to study poverty, don't want to study countries, just want to study wealth, particularly African Americans. And arguably another piece of great advice or a gift that I was given, when I decided to go ahead and write that book, to get the data, I stumbled upon an article in Time magazine that was written back in the 1950s when Martin Luther King was leading the Montgomery bus boycott. And in that article, they said when he led the bus boycott in 1955, there were only 5 African American millionaires. And I carved out a list. I literally took a piece of legal pad and I wrote down 50 names of black men and women, wealth creators, who I thought were wealth creators at the time I was going to meet and interview them. And Charles and Michelle, those 5 black millionaires were at the top of the list. And what was arguably remarkable about that, okay, so here I am in my late 20s, early 30s, and 4 of the 5 were still living. And I just, sent a letter out, and I just wanted to, go ahead and get the data, what made them different, what made them unique, and, the rest is history.
So you made the pivot. You went to school to study poverty. You decided to study wealth. What was the motivation behind that turn?
That is a great question. Because we look in terms of nation states and we look at political economic development, what would place an individual on the path to success? And what I found out, Charles, those men and women who have won mostly in life have relied mostly on themselves. Okay, in 1897, your most prolific scholar, W.B. Du Bois, wrote a book called The Negro in Business. More than 800 pages and the like. And the interesting aspect about that, he taught at Atlanta University, same school that I teach right now, and during the summer months, he got on a train and he just took the train along the eastern seaboard from northern Florida all the way up to Boston and stopped along the way to interview black business owners. Well, you get that book and you read the first 30 pages of that book, there are 2 profound statements that will really place anybody on the fast track of success. Number 1, he said, the man or woman who won't control his or her finances won't control anything else. So if you don't care about the money in your pocket, now remember he said anything else, okay? So if you don't care about the money in your pocket, what do you care about black on black crime in the community? What do you care about the trend right now, declining college graduation rates in black America, if you don't care about the money in your pocket? And number 2, he said, nothing positive will ever occur in a community that fails to circulate its dollars. So when we think of circulating your dollars, I mean, the data's there. No group circulates the dollars more so than East Indians, Arab Americans. The average dollar stays in their community 45 days before leaving. Number 2, Asian Americans. The average dollar stays in the Asian community 24 days before leaving. Number 3, Jewish Americans. The average dollar stays in the Jewish community 17 to 19 days before leaving. On and on and on and on. The average dollar today stays in the black community 6 hours before leaving. So that's number 1. But it wasn't always like that. Okay? My mother-in-law, God rest her soul, she was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the same year of the Tulsa riots, all right? And she always told the story and made sure that she passed that story on to, generations in her family. They needed to know the truth. And she tells the story that when she was an infant, because they told her, In 1921, and we know what happened in May of 1921, you had the Tulsa riots, where her father came home in the middle of the day. All right, you know your father is out working, and your father comes home in the middle of the day. First question, what are you doing home? What's wrong? Blah, blah, blah. So he comes home in the middle of the day, doesn't say anything. Dad, dear, what's wrong? Grab whatever you can. Get whatever you can. Don't carry too much. We got to get out of here. Where are we going? Don't ask questions. Just do what I say. Grab and get. And they lost everything in the process. They lost all their possessions, lost the house, and she shared that story, and that's how they, arrived in Oklahoma City. And I met my wife, beginning of my junior year, and the rest is history. So those two profound statements. So what do we know about 1921 Tulsa, Oklahoma? And all of you listening on the podcast or whatever, I mean, you got to burn this into your subconscious. Those 3,600 square blocks in Tulsa, Oklahoma, from like 1918 to 1921. And again, Du Bois said nothing positive will ever occur in a community that fails to circulate its dollars. There were more than 600 black businesses in those 3,600 square blocks. All right, you had what, 21 grocery stores? You had those 3,600 square blocks. You had what, 2 hospitals. You had 3 individuals with airplanes. And you had one of the best school systems in the state of Oklahoma. And when I found out you had a teacher who finished from Northwestern teaching elementary school kids and the like. So the bottom line, what am I trying to say? The average dollar in 1921, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and those 3,600 square blocks stayed in that community 18 months to 2 years before leaving.
So I'm curious because I actually went to Black Wall Street about a year ago. I was in Arkansas and I just drove out there. But what I thought they did is they actually rebuilt Black Wall Street after it was burnt down. We never talked about that though.
Well, you can't rebuild with brick and mortar. Rebuilt with mindset. That's how you build mindset. And look at your race. Look at your heroes. Go back to ancient Egypt. And what did the great pharaohs and what did the great Cleopatras do? They made sure in the home of every African child there was a bust. There was a statue, a little statuette, a little head ceramic bust of all the great Cleopatras and pharaohs at the time. And around every head was a headband. And on that headband was a cobra. And what do we know about the cobra? People feared the cobra. They ran from the cobra. The cobra is omnipotent. The cobra is all powerful. The cobra could take you out of here. And even Moses, when he stood at the feet of Pharaoh and the Lord of heavenly hosts, Moses placed down that rod. And the rod turns into a snake, into a serpent. What did Moses do? Well, damn it, Moses ran too. And the Lord of heaven said, Moses, stop, stand. Go back and pick up the snake. And Moses began to question the heavenly host. You want what? You want me to pay? How dare you doubt me, Moses? When I say you can do it, you can do it. As soon as he picked up the snake, well, it turned back into his rod. Well, that's a case study for something completely different. But the fact of the matter is, why would the great pharaohs place that cobra on a headband? To get you to protect your mind. Don't you realize that your mind is the greatest resource? Damn it, you gotta think poverty first before you ever engage in poverty. And poverty doesn't exist. Just like darkness doesn't exist. Here we are in the plug. If I cut the lights out and this room became completely black, there's no such thing as black. There's no such thing as darkness. What is it, Dr. Kimbrough? It's the absence of light. There's no such thing as disease. No. Well, what is it? It's the absence of health. Did you hear what I said? It's the absence of health. All right, so here we are in Atlanta, Georgia. You go to CDC. And on a daily basis, the CDC will track what? The top 400 diseases throughout the world. Go to the website and they list the top 400 diseases right now in the United States as of May 21st, 2022. Well, you go to the World Health Organization on a daily basis, the website will track the top 10,000 diseases across the globe. So you got your 2 greatest healthcare research, providers, whatever, and the like. And on a daily basis, they track 10,400 diseases 24/7. All right, so I tell my students, well, that's the bad news. That's Kimbro, what's the good news? Not one was created by God. Did Kimbro, God didn't create the diseases, who did? You did. What do you mean I did? Well, you know, they tell you right now that 50% of all diseases throughout the world is for that lack of adequate drinking water. Maybe the reason why the Lord blew breath into your lungs is go to India, go to Bangladesh, go to some remote village in Africa and dig a well. Or look at your social media, you know, platforms. When Zuckerberg came up with Facebook, when Chad Hurley came up with YouTube, when Reid Hoffman came up with LinkedIn, when Kevin Synstrup came up with Instagram, when Jack Dorsey came up with Twitter, they came up with those social media platforms, you know, for some poor, you know, elementary school child in Johannesburg. Somebody might be motivated to buy her a uniform so she can go to elementary school. They came up with those social media platforms for some poor child, like I said, in Bangladesh. Somebody might be motivated, impelled, inspired to dig a well. They did not come up with those social media platforms for you and I to gossip. Mindset is your greatest resource. The average individual gets 4 ideas a year, any one of which, if you have the guts, the courage, the temerity to chase that dream, just might make you financially independent. And the reason why we don't have more black millionaires and the reason why we don't have more millionaires in general right now, I mean, you can go, I got my data from, you know, the Census Bureau and the Federal Reserve, and they track that. We've got about, what, 18 million millionaires in the United States. As a brand new millionaire, created every 17 hours as a brand new billionaire, created every 23 to 24 hours. Well, the reason why they're not more, you know, when you get up to $250,000 and $350,000 a year, you know, people get comfortable at that, man. I mean, any amount of money can be spent. But you're pulling in, you know, $300,000, $400,000 a year, you can outrun your challenges. You can do that at any amount, but all right, so you got a couple of kids and blah, blah, they're in college, you just pay cash. We don't have to worry about student loan, don't have to worry about, you know, housing and this, that, and the other. So, you know I went in a circuitous way to answer your question, but that's what drove me. And, you know, I looked at wealth and I looked at success, and I will go anywhere and any place. And again, like I said, okay, so I put those 5 names at the top of the list. Who were those individuals? Well, number 1 was John Johnson of Ebony Magazine. The readers and the viewers out there, and listeners and the viewers out there, you probably don't even know who John Johnson was. Ebony Magazine, I interviewed him twice. Got on a plane, flew up, had to beg for the airfare, beg for the hotel and lodging. But I don't care how I got it, I did it, and I went up there and got a chance to sit across the desk from him. We talked about wealth, and we talked about leadership and success. Well, who was another one? Right there in Birmingham, Alabama, A.G. Gaston. Threw my wife and kids in the car, went over there, and God bless their soul. It was a summer day, and they waited in the parking lot, and I interviewed him for the better part of 3 hours. And when I interviewed A.G. Gaston, I was beginning to feel the financial strain, because I did this at full time. I would send letters out asking for interviews and stuff like this, and at the time I was a pharmaceutical sales rep. Like I said, I was the first African American for SmithKline and French in the rotational program. So my first tour of duty was manufacturing, and then they said, we're going to send you out in the field, sales, marketing, and the like, so you can be well-rounded, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay. Well, when they sent me out in the field, I was still working. I was working on my book. I was taking vacation days. I was taking sick days to go interview folks. And so I'm working a territory near my house. Now you listen to this, okay? I'm a big, bad sales rep. And I'm working a territory near my house. And I said, it's lunchtime. Do I want to go to McDonald's, or do I want to swing by the house and get leftovers? And I said, you go by the house and get leftovers. And while I was in my house, the phone rings. And I picked up the phone, and who was it? It was John Johnson of Billionaire magazine. Not his secretary, not his administrative assistant. He read my letter, personally called me up and said, young man, and I was thinking, my God, because there was no answering machine, no call waiting, no caller ID. And when my wife came home, I said, man, can't believe, you know how many, man, just think how many other phone calls I might have missed. And at that time, I said, I'm going full blast with this. She said, how long will it take you? I said, girl, you just give me 18 months. I promise you, I'll wrap this puppy up. And wow, 5 years later. But she hung in there, man, God rest her soul. And so I went over there and AG Gas. Another one, number 3, was right there in Atlanta. T.M. Alexander. Listen, people, who in the world was T.M. Alexander? He was an insurance magnate. He graduates from Morehouse, and his uncle gives him a graduation gift of $100. And he took the $100 and started his insurance business. And what did he do? He insured the cars used in the Montgomery bus boycott. Spent the better part of a day with him. I flew up to Chicago. S.B. Fuller, who was S.B. Fuller, this guy was the godfather of black entrepreneurship. And I shared his story in my book. As a matter of fact, the first article I wrote for Success Magazine was on S.B. Fuller. So, you know, I'm a Johnny-come-lately. I never told anybody, hey, what I'm doing is different and unique. What I'm doing is cutting edge and everything, though, you know, some of the information is. But again, I always give praise to those who've gone before. And this is what Du Bois was doing back in the late 1800s. When Du Bois wrote his book in 1897, The Negro in Business, 10 years later, Booker T. Washington wrote his first book and used the exact title, The Negro in Business.
And I have so much to ask, because I was curious, a lot of times we think that it was W.E. Du Bois versus Booker T. Washington.
No. Now, you know, I'm not going to say they didn't have words. You know, Du Bois could be a little aloof. You know, Du Bois could be a little affront. I'm not saying he was conceited or narcissistic and the like. I mean, check the brother out, all right? He finished high school at 15. When he was 16 years old, Du Bois was teaching. He was a teacher in the public school system in Nashville, Tennessee. He goes to Harvard to get his degree, first Phi Beta Kappa, first, you know, PhD at Harvard, and Harvard didn't even value his undergraduate degree at Fisk. Harvard made him repeat 2 years. And he said, no problem, I'll do it. So, yeah, I give my props to Dr. Du Bois, I do. But I also give my props to Booker T. Washington. When Booker T. Washington finished Hampton, I mean, for 3 years, he went door to door in the South to raise money for Tuskegee. For 3 years, he did that. Man, and he raised $6 million at the time. So you go into, and I've had a couple of presentations. They brought me back, bless their soul, Carnegie Mellon School of Business. They brought me up there so many times to speak to the MBAs and the like. Soon as you walk, state-of-the-art business school. Soon as you walk into that school, there is a huge picture of Booker T. Washington and Andrew Carnegie. Carnegie is bestowing on him a check for $300,000 to build the school. Do you know what $300,000 was worth at the turn of the century? Imagine the hell that he caught knocking on the doors for people trying to raise money for his school. Just think of that. I mean, that's something that, you know, at the turn of the century, Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Tipping Point. Folks out there in cyberspace watching this, you need to go get that book. All 300 pages. What the hell is Gladwell saying in that book? He's saying that any problem. And when Gladwell says any problem, he doesn't care what the problem is. The problem is not, you know, how you know, what the problem actually is. The problem is how you view it and how you see it. So Gladwell is saying any problem. He didn't care if the problem was bloodshot eyes. He didn't care if the problem was shaving bumps. He didn't care if the problem is you couldn't find your father with a roadmap. He said any problem. He didn't care if the problem is irritable bowel syndrome. He didn't care if the problem is you're homeless and you don't know where your next meal is coming from. Gladwell says any problem can be solved if only enough people care. You hear me, Black America? Whatever our problems are, what did Martin Luther King say? Before he died, Dr. King said, any problem that Black America faces right now or will face in the future can be overcome if we just keep walking. That's what he did for George Floyd. He just kept walking. Turned the tide just like that. Just keep walking. Look at some of the nonsense going down in the Black community. If that occurred to any other ethnic group, all right, what do you got? 24, 25 maximum security facilities across the nation, all the way from Attica, New York, to to San Quentin, out there in California. You got one right here in Atlanta, Georgia. You know how many times I've been in there? At one time, the vice warden was a young Black female. She would walk among the men without any security. And I would ask her, because it seemed like one time she had my number on speed dial. Dr. Kimbrough, you got to come and speak to the men. They'll listen to you. I remember one time she called me up and I was on the way to class. And I said, okay, give me a date and time and I'll come in there and I'll speak. When do you want me to come speak to the men? We want you to come now. It's a girl like that class. Well, I promise you, Dr. Kimbrough, it'll only be an hour. It'll only be an hour. I said, okay, I'll get my TAs to come. But man, I gotta go in there, blah, blah. That's another story. All right, so you got 25, 26. If you took all the Black men, these are maximum security. I didn't say minimum. I said maximum security. If you took all the Black men that are incarcerated right now in those 25, 26 maximum security facilities, and you confine them to one central location. In other words, take them out of Marion in Ohio. Take them out of, like I said, Attica, New York. Take them out, all of them, and place them in one central location. That one central location right now will be the 12th largest city in this country. Larger than Charlotte, larger than Memphis, larger than Miami and Oakland combined. Now, if you did that to any other ethnic, you couldn't get them down Peachtree Street. You couldn't get up down I-25, 285 right now because they would shut it down. Say, not now, not today, not tomorrow. Damn it, not ever. What do? We don't go just another day at the office, brother. Brother, you out mindset. Start where you are with what you have, knowing that what you have is plenty enough. It's plenty enough. It's not your resources, damn it. It is your resourcefulness. That's why everybody loves Black culture. That's why everybody loves. Okay, so you got Putin over there bombing Ukraine. Why is he bombing Ukraine? Because he said, because Ukraine is democracy? No, because Ukraine is overflowing in Western culture. Go over there and look at the pictures, man. First of all, everybody your age group, I'm an old fart. I'm 71 years old. Wherever I go, I know I'm going to be one of the oldest. So I'm looking, I got some young folks right here. And you go to Ukraine, all the young folks over there, they speak English. It's the folks my age who need translators. Folks I can't understand. I don't understand that. Can I speak Russian to you? But all the young folks speak English. Why? Because of your Western culture. Look how they dress. That's why he's bombing it. That's why the Republican Party, some of the Republican Party on the side of Russia, they're scared of you. There's no such thing as overtaking. Overtaking what? Come on, man. It is your resourcefulness. If you want money management, go get a Jewish American. You want somebody to take an existing product, a service, and really innovate it, go get an Asian American. You want craftsmanship? Go get a German American. But if you want somebody to motivate, compel you, inspire you, as you are on the way to completing your task and journey, when you don't think that you can, move or go another inch, and you're looking for somebody to lift you up, they turn to you, and particularly black women. And I did a little thing on that. What makes you so strong, black women? Because when they see us and hear our story, oh my God, they started with nothing, and look at them. Whoa, it is your resourcefulness. It's not your capabilities. It is your belief in your capabilities. Come on, man. What the hell are we doing? You got 195 countries that belong to the UN right now. 195. But in terms of wealth, in terms of the resources, in terms of the money, in terms of the buying power, Black America, you're number 16. It's not the lack of money. It's what the hell you doing with your money. Black women, you are 6% of the population. At one time, you bought 24 to 27% of all cologne and shoes manufactured in this country. If you stop buying shoes, black women, whoa, whoa. I'm not pointing fingers, man. I tell everybody, man, I am a girl dad, all girl. Listen, I'm a lifetime member of the All Girls Club, only male in the house. Ladies, I feel sexism before you do because I root for my daughters. So I know. At one time, black males, you were 6% of the population. I mean, you were buying 1 out of every 5 pairs of shoes that Nike was manufacturing. Now, that's not the problem. Now, you know that I teach. So come to my classroom, and knowing your buying power, how many Nike scholars do I have in my class? None? Well, look, damn it, that's a problem. Because every other group leverages that. It's called leverage. How many young ladies are going to Clark Atlanta on full scholarship, Ferragamo scholar? Got any Ferragamo scholars, man?
I haven't heard of that one.
How many Chanel scholars? How many Chanel scholars you got in your classroom? None? It's a big problem. How many Coach scholars? Any Coach scholars?
But they all show up wearing the clothes.
And I'm not knocking that. I know at one time the average black female, 18 to 35, spent, $124, $127 a month on clothes. So I'm not knocking that. All I'm saying, just be aware of the power that you have. Every other group does it. And they use that to go ahead and rise, among, the wealth gap and the wealth curve. It's not so much, in terms of millionaires. We focus on millionaires and blah, blah, blah. But we need to focus not only in the middle class, but the upper middle class. Case in point. This is your case study. Pads down, pencils up. Okay, if you are on the top 1% of white America, that's minimum $8.3 million a year. If you are on the top 1% of black America, that's minimum $3.1 million a year. Then, when you go down, it gets even more stratified, more bifurcated when it goes down. Let's come back, what do you mean? Okay, if you are in the top 5% of black America, you want to be in the top 5% earning power of black America, you ready for this? $350,000 a year. You got $350,000 a year, boys and girls, you'll be in the top 5% of black America. Now, you ready for this? 30% of white America, $350,000 above. What's 5% of you is damn near 1/3 of white America. That's called stratifying. And we got to focus in on the problem. When you look at all the different ethnic groups, once they escape poverty and go from poverty to middle class, to upper middle, to affluent, every other group, once they escape poverty, they never go back. Yeah. No one in the generation, Never goes back. Once we escape poverty, go from poverty, you know, and go to middle class, that's not, I mean, some in our generation, some in our family can actually fall back. I tell that to my students all the time, you gotta be on your guard. Okay, so you look at my grandfather and grandmother. My grandfather was a butler. My grandmother was a maid. They worked for a wealthy white family in North Carolina. Well, slowly but surely, you know, we moved up a little bit. What did my mother do for a living? My mother was a nanny. She took care of wealthy white children right there in New Jersey. And as a matter of fact, that's how she met my father. My father was coming back from World War II. Here's a brother who dodged bullets, you know, in Europe, in World War II, coming back. And the interesting aspect of it, she worked for a wealthy white family in New Jersey, and they were about to take a vacation out in California. And so they took the train from New Jersey to California. Of course, took my mother. She had to watch the kids even on vacation. And it was on that train, the train stopped. Charles and Michelle, I love you madly, in Enid, Oklahoma to refuel. And who got on that train in Enid, Oklahoma? My father. And they didn't go back to Oklahoma until my college graduation. So we got to be on our guard well, advance. And that's why I said what I said about Pinky Cole. Okay, I've been at Clark, Atlanta, close to 25 years. As soon as I got out there, I came up with this crazy idea. My wife gave me so many different ideas, man. Came up with take a millionaire to lunch. I said, I'm gonna close out my school year. I'm gonna bring in a certifiable millionaire to go ahead and speak to my kids, and I'll spring for lunch. I'll get a sponsor to sponsor lunch. And then a 23, 24 year period, I mean, I'm blessed to be in Atlanta. And had all the game changers in Atlanta in my class, for the most part. You name them, they've been in there. Steve Harvey spoke to my kids. Tyrese Gibson spoke to my kids. Dikembe Mutombo spoke to my kids. Arguably one of the best speakers, one of the best. Janetta Patton. Dr. Kimbrough, who's Janetta Patton? Usher's mother. Man, chick was dynamite. And my kids, man, Edwin Peskowitz, owner of the Hawks and Thrashers, spoke to my kids. During the Q&A, one of my students said to Usher's mother, said, "What's the toughest thing you've ever done?" She looked at the toughest thing I've ever done? I said, "Yeah, yes, Miss Patton, what's the toughest thing you've ever done?" She said, "Learning how to cope being the only female, black female in the room." And her follow-up question was, explain, translate. She said, "Every contract that my son ever signed, I negotiated." Bad sister. You know he's part owner of an NBA team. She negotiated that contract. All of his record deals, she negotiated. And of course, Pinky Cole was off the chain. I love Pinky. I love her so much. But that's the way wealth is translated. When you bring the game changers in there and they see, man, they're no different than me, man. They're no different than me, man. Whoa. I remember, the name may not be Ming Lee. Do you know Ming Lee here in Atlanta? Okay, so she spoke. Bad sister. She brought her whole entourage with her. I love her madly, man. And she signed, you know, every program, took every picture. Pinky did the same thing. So one of my students, young ladies, asked Ming Lee, said, "When did you know that you had a passion for hair?" And she fired back, "What makes you think I have a passion for hair?" "Well, obviously you're doing well in it and you're generating wealth and blah, blah." She said, "Well, that's not my passion, it's just a vehicle." And she says, "Well, if hair is not your passion, what is your passion?" She said, "I want to do what you're doing." And my student said, "What am I doing that you want to do?" She said, "I want to go to school and get my degree in marketing because my goal is to produce, you know, Super Bowl commercials." So what can we learn out of that case study? You never know who's looking. You never know who's looking. Like I said recently, man, go get a suit. Some of the brothers in me, man, Dr. Kimbrough, no, damn it, go get a suit. You're not 16. You never know who walks up and down this campus. Now, who taught me that? Well, a number of people taught me that. But when Dikembe Mutombo spoke in my class, and he told my students that, you know, he went to Georgetown on an academic scholarship. Folks don't know that. He was there pre-med, academic scholarship. And at the end of his freshman year, John Thompson sees him on campus. And John Thompson was coach at Georgetown at the Hoyas at the time, approached him and says, "How tall are you?" And Kimbro, he told the story in my class, he said, "7 foot." And he says, "You ever play basketball?" He said, no, soccer. He said, "You need to come try out for my team." So he tried out for the team, and he says, "You know, man, I can give you a scholarship right now if you're serious about this." And he told him, he said, "Well, if I try out for the team and you place me on the team, I want to be the best defensive player that I can be." So they worked on his defense. Okay. So he shared his story with my students, and he said, "Before we wrap this up, let me tell you something. You're business students, and I know you want to know all about my portfolio." And he says, "Yes." And he says, "Yes, I own oil wells in Nigeria. Yes, I own 2 clinics, and I'm building a hospital right now in Africa. Yes, I own 2 schools in Nigeria right now." He says, "But that doesn't tell you who I am." He says, "The flagship of my portfolio," this is what Dikembe Mutombo told my students years ago. He said, "The flagship of my portfolio," he said, "I don't care what hospital you go to in Atlanta. I don't care if you go to Northside. I don't care if you go to Piedmont. I don't care if you go to South Fulton in East Point. I don't care if you go," and he would just listen, "I don't care if you go to Emory. I don't care if you go to Grady. I don't care if you go to Crawford Long." He said, "I don't care whatever hospital you go to in Atlanta. I own the ambulance service in that hospital." He says, "That's my flagship." And he says, "I'm not patting myself on the back." He said, "How did that come about?" And he said, "I flew back to Nigeria. My mother was sick, and she literally died in my arms. And before my mother took her last breath, she said to me, 'What will be your legacy?'" He told the students, and particularly the men, he said, "For 4 years, I was at Georgetown." He said, "I don't care if I was, you know, in my dormitory studying and I had to run up back on campus to go to the library. I don't care if I was meeting my classmates for a study group and I had to go up on campus." He said, "Anytime those 4 years I was at Georgetown, if I ever set foot on that campus, I was in a suit and tie. You never know who's looking." And then I went and told the students, you know, I said the same thing happened to Jay-Z. Jay-Z and Biggie Smalls, you know, they approached Bernard Arnault, CEO of Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, says, "We can impact your bottom line." Bernard Arnault, what did he say to Jay-Z? Just a bunch of rappers in baggy jeans and T-shirts. And then he met, you know, Warren Buffett. And what did Buffett tell him? He says, "Okay, so you just got one vein here, man. You just got, you know, one, you know, wealth stream. You're going to lose out on a whole bunch of deals, man. Folks got to take you serious. How they perceive you is how they will see you. And how they see you, that's how they're going to deal with you. That's how they're going to deal with you. I'm not dressed like this all the time. If you want to see how I was dressed 2 hours ago, my wife would say, "Are you ever going to comb your hair?" "No, not really." "Oh, Dr. Kimbrough." "No, don't call me Dr. Kimbrough. This is my summer. Come fall, I'll be doctor all you want. Let me enjoy my summer." Come on, man. Play the game.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So I think it's so awesome to see how you've been a professor for all this time. So you kind of see the different generations, but also with the impact that you've had on the community and doing all the research. What are some positive and negatives that you've seen with growth within like the generations, like of Black kids, like coming from the different generations?
And I have seen.
So what are some
the growth.
positive and negatives, because you've been there like firsthand?
I know, man. Boy, yes, that would be a great template. Yeah, I've seen the differences Because I even shared like a couple of days ago, you can go to Coca-Cola right now and go up on the C-suite floors, and you might find some individuals there that I've taught, got their MBAs working for Coke and everything. And now Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm with Generation Z. But I mean, you know, that's going to happen with any generation. I mean, they look at me, I'm a baby boomer, I'm 71 years old. Man, you guys are sticks in the mud. You believe that, you know, you go ahead and get a job and you keep a job and you work there forever for your goal, you know, blah, 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 and this, that, and everything. So there's pluses and minuses with that. And with Generation Z, it's the same thing. I mean, the pluses, very creative. Oh, I love your creativity. I love your creativity and innovation. Number two, right there with creativity, I love your can-do attitude. I love it. Don't have to explain it. Let me get out of your way. Just go ahead and do it. Now, there's some negatives with it, okay? A little bit too impulsive so many times. You know, you go ahead and try something that doesn't work. I'm going to go do it. No. Go ahead, try it again. Try it again. Try it again. A little bit too impatient sometimes and blah, blah, blah. But that's like anything and everything. There's pluses and minuses. So you put the entire package together. So you just focus on your strengths and don't worry about, you know, your weaknesses. Concentrate on your value add. Concentrate on your area of excellence. Dr. Kimbrough, can you come in and speak on this, man? No, that's really not my purview. Yeah, I could speak on it, but I just try to focus in on my area of excellence. You know, can you speak on this? No, what is your area of excellence? Well, number one is going to be wealth. It's going to be leadership, excellent communication skills, and that's my swim lane. Let somebody else go do that. Why? Because you never know who's looking. I want to keep my brand strong. Keep your brand strong. Do you even know your area of excellence? Nobody in this room is 16. Maybe over here, man.
Oh my God.
No one in here is a corn muffin.
That's so great.
If you don't know your area of excellence, look, damn it, I need to know why you don't know your area of excellence. What is the number one reason why the Lord blew breath in your lungs? You're here for a purpose. And how do I know you're here for a purpose? Well, if you're not here for a purpose, why weren't you born in 1950 like I was? What did my father say to me, man? And look at his generation. No cultural diversity, no EEOC. I mean, here's a black man whose entire life, every day, his entire life, is a man that did nothing every day but catch hell because of the color of his skin. Well, how come I wasn't born in 1914 when he was? Well, the world wasn't ready for me. The world was ready for me. So 1950, Dennis Kimbrough, all the stop signs have been removed. All the lights are green. Go for it. So why were you born in 2000 or 1998 or whatever? Because all the stop signs have been removed. All the lights are green. So why are you sitting twiddling your thumbs? If you live that normal life, what is a normal life? 74 to 77 years on earth. Damn it, do the calculus. That's only 30,000 days. Boys and girls, that's 4,000 weeks. We just closed the week. Now you got 3,999. What the hell are you doing? Get on with it. I need to see a sense of urgency. I need to see a bias for action. Let's go. That's one of the keys to wealth building. And it's no Rubik's Cube. Success always leaves footprints. If you don't know Biggie Small, now you know. Go ask the wealth creators and we'll do it. Why isn't Think and Grow Rich a black choice? Why isn't What Makes the Great great? Why isn't the wealth choice in every black public schools in the country and charter schools? Not because I wrote it. Oh, those commercials going to increase sales and blah, blah, blah. Not because I wrote it. It's because your wealth creators are telling you what they did and how you could do it. And don't act like you see it every day. Go back to Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell was on a talk show. And the host said to him, Malcolm, in the few moments that we have left, are there any trends out in society that really have you concerned? And Gladwell paused And he stroked his face, and he said, yes, there is a trend. And the host said, in the few moments we have left, please tell our viewing audience. And Gladwell says, I'm concerned about the, hundreds of thousands. And then he caught himself. And he says, no, I'm concerned about the millions of black school children who live in communities that they will never see a black man in a suit and tie. That concerns me. Whoa. 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 Find your area of excellence and pour your heart and soul into it. And how do you find your area of excellence? You ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1, what do I love to do? What do I have a passion for? What can I throw my whole heart and soul into it? What does Steve Harvey tell my students? Career is what you pay for, but a calling is what you're made for. If I asked you what you do for a living, what would you tell me? Would you tell me that it's work? Would you tell me that it's drudgery? Would you tell me that it's hard? Would you tell me that it's an effort? Would you tell me that it's a slave? Well, hopefully you might tell me that it's a mission. Whoa. And then if you tell me that it's a mission, maybe the word passion will come to the surface. And if you tell me that it's a mission and passion, well, it just might be your ministry. When I walk into that classroom, that's my ministry. What did Henry David Thoreau say? Don't die with your music left in you. If you're not going to listen to Henry David Thoreau, listen to 2 Chainz. It's too short. It's been way too long time for the whole world to play your song. When I walk into that classroom, well, damn it, they're going to play my song. Now, how did I get that? Well, I interviewed Andy Young, Mr. Ambassador Andy Young. It's in the books. And what did he tell me? I said, Mr. Ambassador, who had the greatest effects on your life before I could get the question out? He said, Benjamin Mays. I thought he was going to say Dr. Martin Luther King. He walked hand in hand, side by side with Dr. King. And I said, Mr. Ambassador, I'm not knocking, Dr. Mays. But, I thought you were going to say Martin Luther King. Why Dr. Mays? And he said, because you could always tell when a student at Morehouse was taking a class from Dr. Mays. I said, what do you mean? He said, you can see him running across the quad. I said, why? He said, because Benjamin Mays only had 2 rules in his classroom. Rule number 1, he would always correct her English. And the juniors and seniors at Morehouse would say, man, that's whack. Why is this guy correcting my English? And Dr. Mays would reply, would you rather have me correct your English or a prospective employer correct your English? And then rule number 2, Benjamin Mays said, I don't care on the syllabus, I don't care on the catalog, I don't care on the course book. Class starts at 1 o'clock. If I get here at 12:45, that door is closed. On time is late and early is on time. And late, damn it, is fired.
Period.
And he made every student every student, the first assignment, they had to memorize that old poem. I've only just a minute, 60 seconds in it, force upon me, can't refuse it, didn't seek it, didn't choose it. But I know that I will lose it. I'll suffer if I lose it. Pay account if I abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but my life is in it. And I interviewed folks in my books who actually took a class from Dr. Mays, and they recited the poem to me. These are your wealth creators placing all the information in the books. You don't want to buy the book? Don't get the book. I don't care. But man, give it to somebody else. All right, so you come to my study, right? And I live in Southwest DeKalb, all right? The entire first floor of my house is my study, right? Far in, there's my computers and everything. I got rows and rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of books. When I'm a sophomore at the University of Oklahoma, I knew exactly what I want to do with my life. I wanted to teach. So I stopped reselling my books at the end of the semester. I kept everything. On the far end, I got my flat screen TV. So you come to my study, I give you the remote control, and there you go ahead and you begin to channel surf. And you might go to one of the financial networks, one of the financial cable stations, Fox Financial News, MSNBC, CNBC News, blah, blah, blah. And you might find an old interview with Steve Jobs being interviewed. You might find Warren Buffett. You might find Bill Gates being, Elon Musk. When's the last time you've seen one of your wealth creators being interviewed? Tell me.
Today.
They tell, yeah. They tell me there is anywhere between 10 to 16 black billionaires. And I've asked my MBAs, name them. Oh, Dr. Kimbrough, Why don't you know? You know all these folks, why don't you know? How do they earn their billions? What's their value add? Let's talk about their net present value. Let's talk about supply and demand. Every year, every semester, I bring in a financial advisor to teach my kids how to read Wall Street Journal. So this year we had a money manager from one of the banks. He came in, kids come in, when they come in, the morning edition of Wall Street Journal is on the desk. So he teaches them, okay, of course you're gonna read the cover, you're gonna read the first page. I said, let's go to money and investing. Okay, put down, goes to money investing. Turn to page 3 on money and investing. And that morning, there was an interesting article about Steve Jobs and what he was doing, you know, in terms of the iPhone and this and that. So they read this short article, and he read the article, and the money manager says, okay, put your newspapers down. Anybody got any ideas? Because Jobs is saying he's going to do ABC, X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3. Anybody come up with an idea in which Jobs could really impact his bottom line? Did anybody see an opportunity in this flux that he's not capitalizing on? And I had a couple of students came up with great ideas. He said, rather than doing that, I would go ahead and do this and blah, 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 and this and that. And the financial advisor said, those are great ideas. Now everybody look at your watch. You don't have a watch, look at your cell phone. Tell me the time right now. And then look at the watch and look at the cell phone. Oh man, it is 10:50 in the morning, blah, blah, blah. He says, yeah. He says, right now it is such and such time over in Beijing. There's a school, there's a school right there in Beijing, and they're doing the same thing you're doing right now, and they got the same idea that you have, and right now you're a half a day behind. How you gonna make up that time? You're half a day behind. You're already behind. How you gonna close the gap? So these are your wealth creators. Okay, so when I wrote the wealth choice, all right, it took me about 18 months just to come up with the survey. Not only to come up with the survey, but to beta test the survey. So there I am, and at the time I was teaching business communication to my MBAs, and we're going there, we're getting ready to dive into the case. Before we're diving into the case, one of my students said, Dr. Kimbrough, you working on any new books and new material? And I said, yeah. I said, what are you working on? I said, I'm working on a book on black millionaires. You are? I said, yeah. He said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to interview and survey and blah, blah, blah. As a matter of fact, I'm finishing up my survey right now. And then another one said, well, can we see the survey? And I'm saying, yeah, but come on, man, let's dive into this case. No. Can we see the survey? So I brought the survey in, classes on Monday and Wednesday. The next class, I brought it in, and I said, all right, you guys want to do something? Take a look at the survey. Tell me any questions that I need to answer, blah, blah, blah. And so I really gave everybody in the class, blah, 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 and they came back, and they told me, I threw it out there, got a couple of millionaires to go ahead and complete it, and I beta tested it. I gave it to several millionaires, and asked them, am I asking the right questions? Anything need to be deleted? Blah, blah. They said, no, you spot on, blah, blah, blah. Because it was divided into 4 sections. And I wasn't so worried about the first section was on demographics. All right, Census Bureau calls you black. Are you really West Indian? Are you indigenous African? Are you blah, 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 this, that, and that. But the second section is on their finances, and I was asking proprietary information. I was really getting up in their business. All right. How many times do you balance your checkbook? If you're married, who balances the checkbook? Listen to me, ladies. I'm the oldest one in this room. I'm going to talk to you the same way I talk to my 3 college-educated daughters. I don't care what your birth certificate says. You in this room right now, your last name is Kimbrough. More than 85%, if they were married, their wife balances the checkbook. So how many times does your spouse balance the checkbook? Twice a week. Another question: would you have a problem paying an unexpected $5,000 bill outside of your mortgage? What is your credit debt? Stuff like that. So, I mean, number one, they absolutely positively hate being in debt. terms of the buying habits. And, you know, we talk about, you know, fashions and designs and everything. I have no problem with that. But they don't flash the bling bling, you know, to the, what I call the lumpen proletariat. If they were at, you know, a gala in which there's going to be middle class or maybe some low income folks, they're not going in there with the Rolex and, you know, the designer threads. They're off the rack. Now, if they're going to a gala and it's their peer group, then they're going to have the Rolex. Then they're going to wear, you know, the Louis Vuitton and this, that, and everything. There's no flashing. There's no look at me. There's no flossing.
Why is that important? I'm curious. Why is it important?
They know who they are. They know who, they don't need validation from anybody. They know who they are. Look, I'm not different. I love it when I shouldn't use the term like it, but I really like it when I'm walking through Hartsfield Jackson, I'm walking through the airport, and a total stranger comes up to me and says, Dr. Kimbrough, I can't believe I'm meeting you. I got your books, man, blah, 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 blah. I like it when I'm walking and saying, man, I used your books, this and everything. Can you sign? I like it when people do that, when they pull me out. I like that. But I don't need it. I'm not about that. I don't need that. Because if you need that validation, if you need that approval, and you don't get it, baby girl, you're immobilized. I'm not looking for anybody to recognize me, and they're the same way. That's authenticity. It's these other folks that you seeing on cable and these shows ain't got a quarter. Couldn't find a dime with a roadmap. I remember when the Denver Nuggets basketball team brought me in to speak, and the director of player development said to me, Dr. Kimbrough, where do you want to speak? Do you want to speak to him in you know, the conference room that we talked to him, you know, before the games and after the team, or do you want to speak to him in the locker room? I said, no, you pick. I said, the locker room. We were about to walk into the locker room anyway. You know, they just completed practice, they were showering and everything. I said, no, hey, I'm here to serve you. You tell me. He said, well, we're on our way into the locker room. He said, you know, okay, we're walking into the locker room. If they don't give you the undivided attention, please don't feel bad and this, that, and everything. And I said, that's the last thing I'm worried about, somebody giving me their undivided attention. And he said, do you need a mic? I said, hell, I don't need a mic. I'm going to talk to the coach speaking to me. He ain't got a mic. And I told him, I said, listen, I know some of you guys in here bank like Hank. I'm not coming in here to ask you for your autograph and whatever. I know you guys have, you know, signed, you know, 3-year contracts, you know, well up in there, you know, 8, 10, 12 figure. You tell me, whatever. He said, I'm not concerned about what your contract looks now and how much money you're earning. I'm only concerned about your net worth and how much you'll be earning when you're my age. So fellas, guess what? We even Steven right now. That's when they sat down. That's when they toweled up. Hey man, give me a pen, give me a pencil. I got it. Different story. So, you know, going back to information is there. And all you've got to use. And what are the 3 keys? I just put this out there on the pillars of entrepreneurship. Mindset is everything. So number 1, what do you have passion for? Number 2, what would you do for free? If no one ever paid you a dime, if no one ever gave you financial reward for your efforts, what would you do for free? There I am again, going back to John Johnson, and I was on the other side of his desk, and he had a couple of mock covers of upcoming Ebony magazines. And I said to him, I said, Mr. Johnson, if you weren't published in Ebony magazine, what would you be doing? What else would you be doing? And he picks up the mock covers of the magazines and he goes just like this. I love magazines. I love the colors. I love the textures. I love the way they feel. And I said, whoa, this man can't be beat. There I am with Walter Turnbull. Walter Turnbull, founder of the Harlem Boys Choir. Man, he was getting money hand over fist with the movie. Remember the movie Glory? And the soundtrack for the movie Glory, that was a turning point, man. Bank like Hank after that. And I said, Dr. Turnbull, I mean, if you weren't, composing music and blah, 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 let me ask you a question that you're very rarely asked. What is wealth to you? And he went just like this. Wealth is hearing the voices of my boys. So in other words, if money is the driving factor of it, money will not sustain you. It won't. Money cannot be the driving factor. My students say to me, Dr. Kimbrough, you're the only person that writes books about money, and your books ain't got nothing to do with money. And I said, you're exactly right. My books are not about cash. My books are about courage. It takes courage to chase your dream. It takes courage to find a new set of friends because your friends that you and associates you associate with right now, come on, man, they don't empower you. Money is not the bottom line. Love is the bottom line. I don't care what you do for a living. You love your job, you get in a parking space closer to the building. You love your coworkers, you make it manager in no time. So, what do you love it? And then last but not least, if you can't answer those two questions, go to somebody who you respect and admire. I mean, and ask them, what do you see me as? What do you think I'd be good at doing? When you find your area of excellence and you pour your whole heart and soul into it. And the last time I taught MBAs and we would go through the area of excellence, I brought champagne into my class. We all grown folks. And we had a toast. I mean, how do you feel when you know why you are here? Tell me how empowered. When you know why you are here, there ain't no guesswork. When you know your area of excellence, two things you never have to worry about for the rest of your life. Number one, you never have to worry about income. When you know your area of excellence and you pour your whole heart and soul in, you no longer chase money. Money chases you. I didn't call anybody up from the plug. I mean, somebody, my team said, man, you're going to be on, oh, yeah, I heard about that. That's good. When did that transpire? Oh, okay. And 2 days ago, I had another event. And 2 days ago, I had another one. Come on, man. I'm just sitting there just doing. I'm really a boring individual if you see what I do. But I do it over and over and over and over. Why? Because it's like breathing to me. How many of you got up 4:30, 3:30 in the morning because you had an idea, went down to your study and wrote it down and blah, 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 and then went back and got up in bed? I do that all the time, man. I do it all the time. And it's the same thing when you look at the wealth creators. They're in that vein. So when you find your area of excellence and you never have to worry about income. And number two, you never have to worry about employment. Why? The marketplace will seek you out. How many times other schools have contacted me? Dr. Kimbrough, you still at CAU? I see. Yeah, I'm still at CAU. Oh, we're just asking. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Speaking of excellence, I know you're working on a book called Icon.
Yeah, that's it. I'm working, but I got sidetracked, and I had to place that on the back burner. Why? Because my publisher wants a revised edition of Think and Grow Rich: A Black Choice, and that's what I'm working on, a revised edition. And they said, well, there's so many other folks out there. We got to stay relevant and contemporary, and this, that, and everything. I said, okay. So I got about 10 interviews that I'm going after, and the Napoleon Hill Foundation, we were thinking, an anniversary issue because 20 years of Think and Grow Rich came by and went by. Then the 25th year mile marker came by and went by, and now 30 years. So we were thinking, man, this Penguin Random House gonna give us an anniversary edition, man, blah, blah, blah. Well, they said, we ain't doing no anniversary edition. If you want to write an anniversary edition for a book, that just means a new forward. Get somebody to write a new forward, get some new testimonials on the back, slap that on there, throw it out there, paperback. But a revised edition, that's a rewrite 20% of the book. So what I'm doing, a brand new introduction, a brand new benediction, you know me, gotta have my little benediction there. We got a little PD, little prayer and devotion, you know what I'm about. You know what I'm about. People say, man, he was so good. No, because I know no great social movements will ever survive that aren't spiritually based. You know what I'm about. 9 years W. Du Bois taught at Tulane University. 9 years he was there. He taught civics. He taught history. He taught economics. The man even taught Greek. Man, he taught Greek. 3 of the 9 years he was university chaplain. And economics students would walk into his class, think they're going to discuss, talk about, good morning, Dr. Du Bois, and what was his response every morning? Students, good morning, Dr. Du Bois, how are you? Hello, Dr. Du Bois. Dr. Du Bois, good morning, how are you? And what was the W.E.B. Du Bois' response every morning? His response was always the same, Paideia, Paideia, always Paideia. Well, you got a school right here in Atlanta called Paideia. What is Paideia? Paideia is the Greek term for education. It is the Greek term for wisdom. It is the Greek term for knowledge. It is the Greek term for understanding. Paideia, Paideia, Black America, always Paideia. When the vocabulary increases, violence goes down. 1-to-1 correlation. So, a revised edition, 20%, and I said all great social movements, those that endure, are spiritually based. I don't care if you look at Nelson Mandela, spiritually based. Got up the same hour of the day. First thing he did, his daily walk with God. 1 hour. His daily walk with God. 27 years he spent on that island. And the other inmates, Nelson, why do you always smile? I mean, you don't belong here. If anybody belongs here, we belong here. I mean, we're murderers. I mean, we sold drugs, man. We're abusers. We assaulted people. We belong here. All you did was stand up to the South African government and told them that apartheid was illegal. But you always smile. Why do you always smile, Nelson? And what did Mandela say? The reason why I always smile, because even when I'm losing, I'm winning. Look at Dr. King. Martin Luther King got up at the same time of day, 7 days a week, 6:30 in the morning, had the same breakfast, coffee and orange juice. The first hour of his day, P&D, prayer and devotion, went to his book line study. There were 200 books in his book line study. First hour, prayer and devotion. What did Gandhi say? Muslim, Christian, Hindu, Jew, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that God is being praised. Spiritually based. Now you might say, Dr. Kimbrough, we're talking about business. I wonder what that got to do with business. Well, go ask Steve Jobs. What did Steve Jobs say? Steve Jobs said, don't build a business, damn it. Build a movement. Oh, so you're going to be like Mandela. You're going to be like Gandhi. You're going to be like Martin Luther King. Yeah. It's not going to be a business. It's going to be my ministry. Whoa. Dr. Kimbrough, we're glad we came today, man. Now, who taught me that? Whoa, man. Remember I said take a millionaire to lunch? And you'd be surprised the people who completely, totally unannounced have come and sat in on my class. So one day I'm teaching class, and who walks in my class? As soon as I see him, I knew who he was, but I knew my students didn't have a clue. Didn't have a clue. I mean, Randall Pinkett came completely, totally unannounced, right after he won The Apprentice. Completely, totally unannounced. Another gentleman came, stood in the back, and I was like, oh, man, you gotta be kidding me. And I wrapped up, rolled down put my cufflinks back on. I said, bruh, come on down here. You are officially teaching class. So he comes down, I put my arm around him, and he had changed over the years, maybe a little pot belly, gray beard, but I knew who he was. Students didn't know. And I said, students, who's this individual? They looked at him. I said, don't know. I said, sure you do. You know who he is. And he looked around. And I said, okay, on the count of 3, and I said to him, I said, I want you to strike the pose. 1, 2, 3. And when I counted 3, he got on the pose and he went just like this. 1968 Summer Games, John Carlos? And I said, yes. John Carlos, Summer Olympic Games, he and Tommy Smith stood on that platform while the national anthem was being played, hand down, black glove, and blah, blah, blah. Completely, totally unannounced, came to my class. So I said to him, I said, John, pour into my students, tell my students what they need to know and what they need to hear. And so he spoke to them, and then he opened it up for Q&A. And he came up with, he shared so many interesting stories. He talked about the hell that he caught after he did that, and the death threats, and blah, 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 and this, that, and everything, and all the great leaders wanted to meet him at the time he finally spent quality time with Martin Luther King. So he opened up for Q&A. And one of my students said, man, so many rich histories. You know, do you mentor students? Do you mentor anybody? He said, yeah, I mentor folks. And he says, who are some of your mentees right now? And when he said this, you could see why this individual, blah, blah, blah. He said, yeah, I got a mentee out in California. I said, who's your mentee? And he said, Colin Kaepernick. Because Colin Kaepernick going through the same nonsense that he's going through and blah, blah, blah. And so he said, me and Colin, you know, we talk at least 3 times a day and blah, blah, blah. And I said, and the student had a follow-up question, said, who's your mentor? And he says, my mentor is Harry Belafonte. And he says, why Harry Belafonte? Because Harry Belafonte told me he lives out in Beverly Hills, out in California. And Harry Belafonte says, when the average actor or entertainer gets up in the morning, the first thing he or she does is pick up the phone and calls their accountant to find out exactly how much money they have in the bank. Harry Belafonte says, when I get up the first thing in the morning, I call either Nelson Mandela, or before Nelson Mandela, I call Martin Luther King. He said, who's going to lead a more noble life? The purpose of life is not how big, how much, how fluid, how great. The purpose of life is how many lives you have touched along the way. How many lives have you touched along
Man. No better way to kind of end it like that. But we do have a few wrap-up questions we're going to ask you, and we'll open it up to the crowd to ask their own questions. The first question we ask all our guests is, what is your favorite business or investing book?
Oh man, I got a couple. Oh man, I like The Walk Down Wall Street. I like that. And it's not so much a book, but I like tuning into the podcast. John Rogers, Aerial Capital Management. I like, John Rogers and Melody Hobson. I sort of keep it simple. I had a great interview with John Rogers. Slow and steady wins the race. Slow and steady wins the race. So, you got to basically, number 1, know how much money's coming in, know how much is going out. Number 2, set a budget. Set a budget. Arguably the best advice I could get. Here I'm being coached by W. Clement Stone, Napoleon Hill's business partner. for 5 to 7 years, I was going through the dog days, me and my wife living off my wife's earning as an accountant. Couldn't find a quarter with a roadmap. And there I am, W. Clement Stone says to me, he said, you know, this is back in the 80s. He says, young man, you know, when this book is finished and published, you're going to be in demand as a speaker. And I said, wow, are you sure? What's a speaker? And he said, make sure you save your money. As a matter of fact, if you can't save 10 to 15%, every dollar you earn, the seeds of greatness are in you. Now, my brother, you saw me pull up in my car. What type of car was I driving?
Yeah, respectfully, he's about 20 years old, sir.
Yep, 2006 Lexus SUV. Getting close to 300,000 miles on it. The daughter said, Dad, when you gonna get a Mercedes, man? When you gonna... I will, okay, I will. Man. They said, and they started applauding. Oh man, we're just applauding because you're just thinking of the thought. I said, I am, relax, girl. I'm gonna jump out there. But I'm gonna wait till the numbers get right, man. Because actually, I went up to Hennessy Lexus and I was looking at, you know, some of the used SUVs, and I don't like the numbers. I don't like the numbers. Told me, man, I can't do car payments, man. Come on, man, when the numbers are. Dad, come on, man. What are you worried about numbers for? Yep. So, yeah, 2006, and we live in the same home. Bought it in 1984, and burnt the mortgage on that, what, about 9 years ago? My wife was so ticked off because when they sent a letter with the final mortgage payment. And I said, girl, what you got an attitude for? She said, read this letter. I said, okay. I could see why she was mad. Why? To whom it may concern. Ha! They had 30 years to get my name right. Yeah, I said, girl, don't put that attitude on it, girl. It's gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right. I am off the rack. Plain Jane. Any questions before we wrap this puppy up?
What sets apart Black millionaires from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
Wow, great question. And so many of them actually fail their way to success. Fail their way to success. Man, when I asked Tyler Perry how he did it, man, he said nothing but the grace of God. I said, Tyler, man, you went from sleeping in your car in New Orleans and sleeping in your car, you know, right here in Atlanta, Georgia, building a $250,000 production studio. What in the world was going through your mind, man? How in the world did you do it? Nothing but the grace of God. And sometimes, even when I'm driving down Memorial Drive, and I pass, Stone Mountain Toyota, that's where he washed cars. Go by Stone Mountain Toyota, he washed all the cars in the, out there in the lot. Wash them, and the next day go back on, wash them again. The next day go back on, wash them again. Karate Kid, wax on, wax off. How would you do that? Whoa, man, nothing but the. There I am, man, with Kathy Hughes. Kathy Hughes was your first billionaire. Radio TV One. Man, the time she gave me, I spent 2 days with her. 2 days. And when she bought her first radio station, man, that was everything. She had a place to live. For a better part of a year, she slept on the floor of that radio station. She and her son. And that restroom down at the end of the corridor, well, that's where they bathe. So they know all about failure, but failure is never failure until you accept it as such. And stop it right now. Damn it, I get sick of God's testing you. God is not testing you. Why in the world would God test you? He gave you the dream. He pulled out all the stops. That's your non-belief. That's your ego testing you. Sooner or later, you got to tell ego and non-belief and call the non-believers unachievers. Tell them, go to hell. What did Mother Teresa say when she wrote it? In the final analysis, it's never between you and them. It's only between you and God. What's the first handout I give to my students every semester? It's not the syllabus. First handout I give to my students are the 4 greatest prayers. Do you even know the 4 greatest prayers? If you don't know, I need to know why you don't know. And invariably, I'll get a couple of students, Kimbro, what does this got to do with business? Absolutely, positively nothing. But I'm an old guy, man. I've been around the block a couple of times. And you're an aspiring entrepreneur, and sooner or later, life just may knock you down on your knees. And when you get there, here's some excellent reading material. Number 1, Lord's Prayer, our Father, who art in heaven. Hear what it said? It says, our Father. It doesn't say the black father, white father, Asian father, East Indian father. It says our Father. So what does it mean? We're all connected. We're all connected. I can't wait for the end of the world. I can't wait for the end of the world to come. What in the world does that mean, to the end of the world? It doesn't mean that we're going to be engaged in a nuclear holocaust. Russia and China on one side bombing the hell out of the United States, and everybody's going to be splattered to obliterate, to smithereens. It doesn't mean that. It means exactly what it says, to the end of the world. And what is the world? All this nonsense that you see, this hatred, this violence, all the negative emotions. And what are the negative emotions? Fear, anger, jealousy, hatred, guilt, greed. Till we don't see that anymore. Till we see the world before Adam took a bite of that apple. That's what I want to see. When everything and everyone was in complete harmony. That's the will of God. Everybody talks about they know God's will. Oh, really? You do? What's another word for God? Well, another word for God is love. And what is will? Will is thought. So what is the will of God? Think love. Think love. And what is love? The absence of fear. The absence of hatred. The absence of doubt. Listen to me. The absence of poverty. I'm so sick and tired of these brothers just boasting on the poverty. Hey, Doc, what's up? How you doing, man? I'm doing fine. How are you doing, brother? You look good. Man, I'm broke as a joke. If I had your hand, I'd throw it in, man. I can't find it. I'm like a squirrel, can't find a nut. Will you quit boasting about your poverty? Doesn't exist. I'm reaching my pocket and give you $20. Go to Publix. Give me $20 worth of poverty. Here's my card. Fill it up with poverty. What is it? It's the absence of wealth. In other words, it doesn't exist. Because as soon as when you focus on wealth, man, where poverty go? Where's poverty? We're broke. Whoa. Whoa.
Mic drop moment. Can we clap it up for Dr. Kimbrough, please? We got a few questions. I'm sure Bruce has some. And then we'll give everybody a chance to ask a question. Or not now. We can work it out. Go ahead, Bruce.
Drop the mic, my brother.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
The pleasure is ours, I assure you. I have a philosophical question. First of all, I'm Bruce Hill, New Skills, New You. And I have a philosophical question to ask. I want to ask a more personal question. As I've improved my skills and my income has increased, it's doubled and it's doubled again, I always manage to have just enough. Which seems like if I increase, I should have more than enough. Mm-hmm. How do I shift my mindset to a wealth mindset? How do I shift away from it?
Well, it's like saying, is the glass full or the glass half empty? Oh, God, I choose to say the glass is completely full. Don't focus on your circumstances now. Focus on where you want to be. Just Kimbro, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Neither. God came first. Your glass is full. You got more than enough. Focus on more than enough, and you will be, abundance will be at your feet while you're focusing on more than enough. But if you keep saying, oh man, gee, I just have just enough. It's like driving to the airport. Man, I hate driving to the airport. Why? Because I never find a parking space. Where you're in the car, you get to the airport, what are you looking for? Never finding a parking space. It's called keep your eye on the prize. Keep your eye on the prize. What is faith? Taking the first step without even seeing the staircase. I'm only focused on the prize. You don't focus at one, okay, I held, besides the interviews that I had with the millionaires, okay, this is a study. Wrap your mind around this. Number one, I used a full-blown survey. I asked them 118 questions that they completed anonymously. I didn't want them to sign it, blah, blah, blah. Some of the millionaires and billionaires, they attached their business card to it. Some placed it in the mail, put the return address on it. I wasn't asking for that. I want an announcement. Hey, it engendered, yeah, thank you very much, but I wasn't asking. So that's number one. Number two, I had 6 focus groups around the country. And this is where you come in with your question, right? I had 3 focus groups right here in Atlanta. I had a huge focus group in Washington, D.C. There were more than 100 black millionaires in that focus group in Washington, D.C. Carla Harris, highest ranking black female on Wall Street, was in that focus group in Washington, D.C. Bob Johnson, at the time, owner of the Charlotte Hornets, is in that focus group in Washington, D.C. The Roberts brothers, Michael and Stephen Roberts, who bordered on billionaireship. As a matter of fact, one of the Roberts brothers even completed a survey for me. He just sat there at the table, he just said, I said, man, I don't need it. No, Doc, I need you to have it. No. Okay, here it is. Was in that focus group. Now, why did I share that information about the focus groups? Because not one of the 1,000 or so millionaires, not one could tell me the day that they became a millionaire. Why? They were focused on the prize. I said, could you tell me the day in which you crossed the threshold of 7 figures? Man, I sure couldn't, man. As a matter of fact, when I realized it, I had crossed that barrier almost a year or so prior to, man. They were completely wrapped up in the task at hand. And again, it goes back with, what Jobs said. Jobs gave you 4 reasons why to be in business. He said, number 1, don't build a business, build a movement. Number 2, make it easy for people to do business with you. What the hell does that mean, entrepreneur? It means there are 21 different ways to market or sell a product or service. So I tell Generation Z, your generation is only enraptured with only one of them, and that's internet. Internet's number 21. What about the other 20? You guys are just in love with internet, man. There are 20 other different ways to market or sell a product or service. Suppose, don't you want it in a store? Don't you, number 1 is word of mouth. Number 2, flyers. Anybody advertise and promote using a flyer? They do it all the time. Go up to the AUC, man, trying to get the young ladies in the club, man. Here's the flyer, man. Look at this. So you definitely get the flyer. They're in love with flyers, man. What is number 4? Number 4 is advertising on a bench at a bus stop. There was a financial company, ING. Remember ING? Yeah. Always on a bench at a bus stop. What's number 7? Number 7 is advertising with a poster on a bus stop. And who loves that? Hollywood. They got a poster of a movie right there while you're sitting right there for the bus to come, waiting for Marta to come, and they got a poster. Netflix loves that too. Okay, what's number 12? Number 8, excuse me. Number 8 is advertising on top of a truck. Now, why is that critically important? Okay, my students, why would anybody want to, advertise on top of a truck? I said, suppose your business is near an airport. It's the only way they're going to see it. Looking out the plane, blah, blah, blah. You think I'm crazy? Look, damn it, you think I'm crazy? So Jerry Jones comes up to placing the finishing touches on his stadium. Jerry World. Dallas Cowboys. True story. And before he puts his name on that line that is dotted on that document, he says, one last thing before I sign my life away for this stadium. Show me what my stadium is going to look like on the top. He said, what do you mean? Look like a, no, just show me what it looks like on the top. And when they saw Dallas Cowboys logo, blah, 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 he signed his name. Mr. Jones, why is that important? Because that's the first image I want to see from the Goodyear blimp. And every time, you look the next time the Cowboys are on TV, the first image you're going to see is that stadium from the Goodyear blimp. Steve Jobs, man, make it easy for people to do business with you. Man, I hear my brothers, and every time you're an entrepreneur, I said, brother, you're not hardly an entrepreneur, man. You ain't even a small business owner. That's okay, work with me, working. Why I gotta work with you? You're the one, make it easy for me to do business with you. Number 3, according to Steve Jobs, fulfill the dreams of your client. I don't care whatever line of work that you have. Whatever line of work you have, you got a customer. If you're a parent, your customer is your child. If you're a doctor, your customer is your patient. If you're a teacher, wow, your customer is your student. Okay, so in 1991, I was offered to teach at Clark Atlanta School of Business. Okay, I knew I wasn't going to teach till 1992. So Dr. Kimbrough, what did you do for 1 year prior to teaching at Clark Atlanta? I went around the country and interviewed the absolute best teachers, professors I could find. I wasn't, now I knew I could teach. I mean, you got a PhD from Northwestern, one of the top schools in the country. Brother, you can teach wherever you want to teach. So I was armed with that, but I wasn't going to make a fool of myself. Again, tell ego to go to hell. So I went around, man, and the top professors and teachers, I was going to meet and interview to find out, man, give me some words of advice, man. Well, who were some of the top teachers that you sat before? Well, I told you, Walter Turnbull, founder Harlem Boys Squad. Right there, I went up to Chicago, West Side Preparatory Prep. Oh, man, right on the tip of my tongue. And she finished from Clark. Oh, my God. And she came up with West Side Preparatory Prep. Right, so then her name's gonna come to me, blah, blah, blah. Well, anyway, I went out to California and I had lunch with Charles Benin. You don't even know who Charles Benin is. My contemporary, a little bit older than me at the time, taught entrepreneurship at Stanford Business School. One of his students, Phil Knight. It was in his class that Phil Knight got the idea, which became Nike running shoes. So I'm having lunch with Dr. Benin. I said, Dr. Benin, man, did you know that your student Phil Knight was going to hit the mother load, man? Instant billionaire, blah, blah, blah. And we were taking bites of the sandwich. And he said, yeah, Phil had a head full of dreams and he was always a good student. But I wasn't concerned about how much money he was going to make. I was just trying to stay true to my goal as an instructor, as a professor, as a teacher. And I said, what is your goal as a teacher? He said, to always enable the dreams of my students. Always enable the dreams of my students. There's not a professor in the AUC. I did not say CAU. I said AUC. Go to Morehouse. Go to Spelman. Go to Morris Brown. Go to ITC. Go to Morehouse School of Medicine. Go to CAU. There's not a professor in the AUC that has more students than me. Last count, last spring semester, 340. Now, what do I want you to know about the 340? Always think what Dr. Benin told me, enable the dreams of my students. Of the 340, damn near everyone's got my cell phone number. Pull up my cell phone right now. Call me all the time. How many times a day do you think I FaceTime? I was commencement speaker last month at Golden Gate University out in San Francisco. How many times do you think they called me out there? enable the dreams of my students. You name the place, I've graded a paper at that place. With 340 students, we analyze case studies, and you got to give it back in time so they can go ahead and make the changes for the next assignment. You name the place, I have graded a paper at that place. I've graded papers sitting in the back seat of a yellow cab driving up Fifth Avenue in New York. Name the restaurants here in Atlanta. You think I'm looking at a menu? No, I'm sitting there grading papers. I've even graded a paper while the hygienist was cleaning my teeth. Dr. Kimbrough, you don't put that paper down and open up your mouth. Enable the dreams of my clients. And then last but not least, you can't focus on those three according to Steve Jobs. Students come in, getting up close to commencement. Dr. Kimbrough, I got a good job, man. I can't walk across that stage by myself. I said, baby girl, you got a job. I do? Yeah. Continuous, constant, professional development and improvement. Continuous and constant professional development. There's a sign in my classroom that reads, if you don't read, if you don't study, if you don't grow, if you don't develop, if you don't go to the seminars, if you don't go to the conferences, if you don't sit in the front row in the first seat, and you don't take good notes, another student will. And the day you meet that other student, you lose. You lose. Brother, you lose. Continuous professional development. And number 4, the last one, well, basically that's it. One last question, and we're going to wrap this puppy up. Focus on your goal, my brother.
Thank you.
That's what you've got to do.
You got one, VR?
Cool. So, Henry Goss.
Come over here where we can see you, man. How you going to hide behind here?
It's still for you.
Grab a seat.
All right. So,
I always teach my students how to walk in the room.
oh yeah, I appreciate that. So, Henry Goss.
You walk in the room, that means walk into the room. And you saw the way that I walked in the room. What's the first thing I did when I walked in the room?
You said hi to every single person here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I noticed that.
That's what Obama calls commanding the room. There are 7 values that corporate America adheres to, particularly black corporate America. Because I also surveyed at one time the top 150 African Americans in corporate America. And number one is called executive presence. And people think executive presence, throwing a suit, blah, blah, blah. There's more than throwing a suit. It's commanding the room. It's commanding the room. People don't care about you until they realize how much you care about them. Until they realize how much you care about them. What was Maya Angelou's claim to fame? That she wrote a poem and it was recited at Bill Clinton's inauguration? Bah, hell no. Maya Angelou's claim to fame was she was the first black female streetcar conductor in 1969 in San Francisco. And if you ever got on her streetcar, you would swear her name was on the side of that car. Because she commanded it. She'd go up to one rider, your boss has been on your back because you've been late 3 times, I'm gonna get you to work early today. You got a doctor's appointment, everybody pray for him that those tests come back negative. You got a job interview, baby girl, you getting that interview. All right, everybody hold on, you all ready? Let's go. That was Maya Angelou. That was Maya Angelou. Care. Just like that Outback steak commercial, you can't fake steak. Well, look, damn it, you can't fake caring. You can't fake caring.
All right. So,
I know you don't want to hear that. But go ahead.
yeah. So again, Henry Goss.
I'm going to set up.
And my question for you is: we all know that the greats are great, right? But what do most people underestimate about their journey to actually actualizing their greatness?
Yo, I didn't hear actually. What was it again?
Oh, what do basically, what do people underestimate about the journey to actualizing or activating their greatness?
Enjoy the journey. It's the process. Enjoy it. If I changed anything, and I went through so much nonsense, finishing that first book, you name it, went through it, almost lost my house 5 different times. And the last time, I knew that we had lost it. We were, about 6 months behind in the mortgage, and when they sent photographers over to take pictures of the property, that's number one. Number two, I got 2 cars repossessed. And when the sheriff comes over to repossess the car, they knock on the door, ring the doorbell. Whoever answers the door, they place the citation in that. They don't come in the house. Whoever answers it. So when they came to repossess the second car, my youngest daughter was 9 years old at the time and placed the citation, the summons in her hand. And she brought it in to me. I said, who's at the door? She said, Daddy, the policeman wanted me to give this to you. And I could hear them putting the car on the back of the tow truck. Now, is that the last image I want my daughter to remember, that when she was 9 years old, they were towing Dad's car away? Or when she just graduates from high school, about to enter Spelman, and me and her mother, take her to a car dealership, say, get in a new car you want. You tell me which image. So, to answer your question, if I changed anything that occurred in my life, I wouldn't be the individual I am right now. I wouldn't be the individual I am right now. For all practical purposes, Think and Grow Rich, a Black Choice was finished, and I was looking for a publisher. And so I picked up, Publisher Digest magazine and blah, blah, blah. And I see in the back McGraw-Hill, who was the top publisher in New York, and blah, blah, blah. And I called them up. And I spoke to one of the vice presidents. I knew he was a white guy. And I called him up, and he said, okay, overnight to me. And I took it to the post office and spent money that I didn't have to overnight. Imagine the manuscript that became Think and Grow Rich, a Black Choice, and overnight it to him and sent it to him. Less than 3 days later, I got it back. And I turned to my wife and I said, Pat, he sent it back to me. There's no way in the world he could have read this. And blah, blah, blah. What happened? Maybe it got lost in the mail? She said, call him up. I said, boy, call him up. And so I called him up. You know what this man told me. And damn it, you listen to me. And the folks on this, you listen to me. I called him up and I said, you sent it back, did you read it? And he said to me, number one, everybody knows that he said, this book is for Black Americans and everybody knows that blacks don't read. And then number two, you didn't tell me this is a business book. And if they were going to read, they definitely wouldn't read a business book. Click. White Vice President McGraw-Hill. Do you know how much money he cost McGraw-Hill by that decision? Think and Grow Rich, a Black Choice. Some people make little mistakes. And some people make huge mistakes. Wow. File that under the heading huge mistake. Close the drawer. Well, I wouldn't be the same individual that I am right now. I remember I was calling anybody, all right, it's one thing to go interview somebody, and you got to go ahead and get the money for the airline. Suppose you can't come back the same day, that means you got to spend the night, that means hotel. And this was 7 years of this. And I said, man, I wish somebody would just, so I can go ahead and finish this. So I'm not going to mention his name, here in Atlanta. And he said, we had a couple conversations, and I'm trying to close the deal on him to get some, money out of him so I can go ahead and finish this task. And he said, meet me at this club, we can have some drinks and we can talk over drinks. And I knew something was up. I don't like doing business off over drinks. Let's go over where we're, serious. But I said, no, we'll have a few drinks. And it was about, okay, what time are we gonna meet? Like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. No, we can meet 8 o'clock, maybe 9 o'clock at night. So 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, we meet him southwest side of Atlanta, blah, blah, blah. We got in there, I noticed the place was packed. And it was noisy. And I said, I thought we were gonna, just you and me. Man, brother, Kimbro, you always uptight, man. Relax, okay? And so I got a beer and we were talking. And I said, did you read, the couple of the chapters? He said, yeah, man, you're excellent. I really like it and stuff. And we were talking, and then all of a sudden, he said, hold up for a second. We'll finish this conversation later. Hold up for a second. All of a sudden, it was almost like a place like this, and the lights got black, a couple of spotlights in the back, off sides of the bar, showed the spotlight, sorry about that. And then they put out a runway, and what was it? Turned into a strip club.
What?
Turned into a strip club. May have done a lot of things in my life, but I've never been in a strip club in my life. I have no desire. My wife died a year ago. She transitioned. We were 9 months short of being married. 50 years. 50 years, 9 months short. We got married as high school seniors. No, you don't do that anymore. And as a matter of fact, I told my youngest daughter a couple of days ago, they had pictures, they posted on Instagram pictures when they were small and this, that, and everything. We were talking about, I shared with them when I first met their mother and blah, blah, blah. And they heard the story before when she was walking down campus and I just asked her if I could carry her books to class. He said, Daddy, you are such a nerd. I said, they don't do that anymore. You're talking more than 50 years ago, man. Now, different story, the brothers and the sisters, man. You just ask, can I walk with you? Yeah. Can I carry your books? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. So we got married, we were seniors, we got married by a justice of the peace. And we were so afraid to tell anybody when we went back to class after we got married. But yeah, 50 years, so people ask, man, Dr. Kimbrough, what was it like, almost 50 years, man? Give me some advice, man. Is it love? Is it this? What do you need to be married that long, man? Have a relationship that long? And I say, yeah, well, love. It takes love, and it certainly takes fidelity and loyalty. But we had a quality, a trait that sometimes was more powerful than love, more powerful than fidelity and loyalty. And they asked, what is it? And I said, well, we had rhythm. I said, what do you mean? There were so many times that I didn't believe in myself, and it was her who was pulling me up. You want to see me crawl on the floor? You should see me crawl on the floor after the second car got repossessed. Well, it was on her lap that I prayed. It was on her shoulder that I cried. Second time we got our water cut off. The second time you get your water cut off, they put a surcharge on there. $65. I couldn't even pay the bill, let alone the surcharge. You ready for this? The water was cut off on a Friday. Went the entire weekend. And I lied to my 3 daughters. I'm not proud of it. I'm not perfect, but I am perfect. Did you hear what I said? No one in here is perfect, but each of us is perfect. You get down on your knees right now and thank God that the Bible says you were created in His image. He wasn't created in yours. What is His image? Perfection. So I lied to my daughters. Dad, there's no water coming out. I know they're working on the pipes outside. So Pat said, man, what are you going to do? I said, Pat, I'm going to think of something Monday. I'm going to go down there. And blah, blah, blah. She said, no, just let me ask my father for the money. I said, no, Pat, man, I got us into this. Let me get it out. So Monday morning came along. I don't know if anybody's ever been to the water company in DeKalb County, but at the time, you go in there and you get a number, because the line is from here to Valdosta, and you get a number, and they had 3 clerks to help you with your water bill. And they all had like 1950s Social Security desk, and they had a glass partition, and they all had computers on the desk. Okay, 2 male, 1 female. And the 1 female was a black woman. And I said to myself, if I'm gonna bare my soul, I'm gonna bare my soul to this system. You see, black woman, that's what you bring to the table. That's what you bring to the table. We're gonna talk about this. So I'm in line, and I'm trying to position myself in line where she calls my number. So I'm in line, and I can see where the line's moving too fast. I let somebody, no, you can go ahead. You can go ahead. You go with that guy right there. I'm just going like this, man. I'm just going like this. Number such and such, oh yeah. And I walked into her cubicle, right? Glass partition. And as God is my witness, I got down on 1 knee. My self-esteem was so low, I couldn't even look her in the eye. And I said, you're going to think I'm crazy. You're going to think I'm out of my mind. If I had the money, I would pay for it. I'm writing this crazy book. I don't even know if anybody's going to read it. I've been 5 years doing this. I've been robbing Peter to pay Paul. My entire life is wrapped up into this. And I'm just asking for a chance, somebody to believe in me and blah, blah, blah. She said to me, she said, look up. And as God is my witness, remember I said glass partitions, the other 2, blah, blah, blah. And she went just like this. She looked to her left. She looked to her right, hit some keys on the keyboard, erased my entire account. And what did she say to me? She said, I won't tell if you won't. Now pick up your bed and go walk. I ran out of it. Went home and told my wife. She thought I was lying. I said, Pat, go in, man. They erased the bill, man. They erased the bill. Go ahead. Cut the water on it. Didn't come on all night, but in a couple hours it did come on. Now, who set that up? Remember I said, man, I wouldn't change that. I mean, we speak to God through prayer. How does God speak to us? Through intuition. Through acts. You know, you can call it a coincidence all you want. I ain't calling coincidence doo-doo. Man. You have not because you ask not. And there's 50 million different ways you can ask. That's what I love about Denzel Washington. They said Denzel Washington, right now, they're making a movie out of Kimbro, It's a Black Choice. And they're approaching Denzel Washington to do some voiceovers on it, this, that, and everything. And they were sharing the story about Denzel Washington. He looks at a script. And when he's looking at a script, you would think that he's taking a test. He's taking an exam. Why? Because he's got a number 2 pencil in his hand, looking at a script and crossing off this and crossing off that, and blah, blah. And the producer said, why are you crossing off that? He said, these are lines right here. I'm not saying this line. He said, yeah, look. He said, you don't say these lines. You act these lines. And that's why he's 2-time, Academy Award winner. He said, you don't say this, you act it. Wow. 50 million different ways you can ask. I mean, and there's 50 million different ways you can win, too. You can win by being in the right place at the right time. You can win because today is your day. You're in the zone. Michael Jordan, give him the ball. He's unconscious. You can win somebody feeling sorry about you. You can win because you're number 1 in line. But suppose you're number 2 in line, and suppose today's not your day, you're not feeling it, and suppose no one is feeling sorry for you. What's the greatest thing you can do? Preparing to win. Preparing to win. And who was that? That was my father. Every Sunday, that man shined his shoes every Sunday night. Just in case somebody's going to call him. You know what I'm going to call a black man back in the 1950s for what? It ain't happening here, bro. And I saw the same thing, man. I mean, when I graduated in 72, trying to get a job out there and everything. I tell my students, man, you guys got more opportunity in 5 minutes than I had in 5 years. But with his wisdom, big Yankee fans. And one time we went to a Yankee game. My family didn't have a car until I was in 8th grade. I was 13 years old. So we took public transportation. We came back from the Yankee game to come, from Yankee Stadium back to our home in Teaneck, New Jersey. And I got the last seat on the bus, and the bus was packed. And my father was holding the strap right next to me as I was sitting. I was about, 9 years old, 10 years old, almost about the same age as my grandson. Well, they were still letting people on the bus. And then a white woman, she gets on the bus and she funnels to the back where we were in the back. And she's standing right next to my father. And the bus takes off. And my father turns to the white woman and said, "Ma'am, would you like to sit down?" And she says, "Oh, yes, I'm so tired." My father knees me because I got the last seat. And he said, "Going like that?" I said, "Yes, sir." And I got up and I'm holding on to my father's waist. It was like a tree trunk. While the white woman takes the seat that I had. She tells my father, "Oh, your son is well mannered, so behaved." And my father says, "Thank you, ma'am." And didn't think anything about it. Well, the next week, Sunday night, he's shining his shoes. And I'm sitting there with my legs crossed and holding up my hand because I should, enamored with my father. He was my hero. And my father shining his shoes said, "Boy," he said, "the highest compliment a man could ever receive." You listen to me, boy. I said, "Yes, sir." It's the highest compliment a man could ever receive is that his children are well behaved and well mannered. You understand me, boy? I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Son, one day you're going to have a family, you're going to get married, you're going to you raise your family the right way. You understand me, boy?" I said, "Yes, sir." Whoa. It was, last story I'm going to tell you, then we're going to leave people ask me, blah, 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 this, that, and everything. It's almost like I followed the breadcrumbs throughout my entire life. My father was big on education. And me and my brother, we couldn't watch TV on school nights. And back then, like I told you, I'm an old fart. They only had 4 stations on TV, ABC, NBC, CBS, and then you had UHF. And we couldn't watch TV on school nights. My father had to check our homework and blah, blah, blah. But he only made one exception for a television show that me and my brother had to watch. It came on once a week for 30 minutes, and my father made sure that me and my brother were in front of that TV watching the show. And what was the name of the show? Biography. Mike Wallace was the host. And after the show, my father would quiz me and my brother. And there were no black profiles. I mean, I'm watching Winston Churchill. I'm watching Eleanor Roosevelt. I'm watching Charles Lindbergh, first transatlantic flight. I'm watching FDR. And my father would go, "Okay, tell me what you just saw." "They had a dream?" "Yeah." "You got a dream, boy?" I said, "Yes, sir." "What type of dream do you have?" Blah, blah, blah. All right, they had obstacles, but they didn't quit, did they, boy? I said, no, Dad, they didn't quit, blah, blah, blah. And my entire life has been biography. I still do the same thing. So Easter Sunday, my dad would always take, my mother and me and my brother, and we'd have a Sunday dinner. And if we had money, sometimes we would go to Newark, New Jersey, back in the early 60s. Black folks used to go to Newark, New Jersey, like it was Atlantic City or Miami. "Man, you going to Newark? Man, how you get some money to go to New York?" Newark and New York. Well, he took us to New York, and back then, the United Nations had just opened up. The UN. It was going to be a great confab, great vehicle to unite the world, and blah, blah, blah. So my father arranged it. Well, they took us on a tour on the General Assembly floor. And I could see the names of all the diplomats from the different countries. And we're taking them to, they had the name tags out there, and every single diplomat had either the letters DR before their name or the letters PhD at the end of their name. And I'm looking at that, and I'm saying to my dad, man, this is almost like we're being in a hospital, Dad. Look at all these doctors. And my father said, son, no, these aren't medical doctors. These are individuals that have a doctorate degree, doctor of philosophy. That's the highest degree that you could obtain. And right then and there, I was 10 years old, and I said to my father, I'm going to get one of those degrees. While I was conferred the degree, my father had transitioned 3 years prior to me receiving that degree. Took my degree. I went graveside right there in Paramus, New Jersey, stood at his marker. I said, Pop, we did it. We did it. We did it. What is the secret to life? The longer that you can project yourself into the future, the greater the chance for success. It's the short goals that we dismiss. The short goals that we dismiss. All right, I shouldn't be an ounce more than 195 pounds. So I get on the scale, 196. I'm gonna go ahead and take care of that. But I'm gonna drink me some beer later on today and watch. Yeah, baby. Yeah. I'm gonna get down, baby. It's the short goals that I dismiss. But my long futuristic goals, that's the first thing. What's the first thing you do when you get up in the morning? Did you look at your goal card when you got up this morning? Oh, wait a minute. Do you even own a goal card? Do you look at it? I got mine right here.
Got mine here.
All the time. Before I go to bed at night. That my auto suggestion, live my life on purpose. The longer that you see in success, and really the first success book ever written, and people don't know this, outside the Bible and the Quran and the like, was called The Structure of Scientific The Structure of Scientific Revolutions by David McClellan. Go ahead and look at David McClellan, who's a professor at Harvard. And it's called Time Determinants. The longer you can project yourself in the future. All right, so you go down to Grady, go to Crawford Lawn, go to the North Side, go to the nursery, see the brand new babies. All right, and there's the brand new babies, and the mom and dad, the mom, the daddy, and the siblings are looking at their brother or sister or their child through the glass window and say, oh yeah, that's my child, and blah, blah, blah. But when the grandparents come down there, what do the grandparents say? That's my grandson, granddaughter. I'm gonna make sure that my grandchild goes to this school. I'm gonna make sure that my grandchild go to this college. After this college, they're gonna go to this grad school. And before you know it, that child's future is mapped out 24 years in advance. Because I've done that with my grandkids. I mean, I tell them, yeah, I want you to be entrepreneurs. I want you to be bank like Hank. But after you get your degree, you go to this grad school. 24 years in advance. Now go down to Skid Row. All right, I told you I was out in San Francisco last month, and I went down to the Bowery. I went down to Mission Avenue, Mission Street down there, the Mission in San Francisco. And what do you see? You see alcoholics and, blah, 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 just, addicted to their indiscretions, and the furthest that they can think is the next bottle of wine. Hour, 2 hours, 3 hours in advance. Just switch the data. So all this game is switching the data. Keep your habit, but just switch the data. And that's all it is. Anybody can win one time. Anybody can win one time. But when you can win the next time, and the next time, and the next time, LeBron, Beyonce, Rihanna, when you can win the second time, the third time, well, that's called dominance. And that's what I want you to dominate. But they still use the same habits. Still use the same habits.
Oh my gosh.
Michelle Marbell.
Listen, one more time, guys. I think for us to come to a speaker, if you guys have seen me to not say much is a lot because I talk a lot, but Dr. Kimbrough, I have to say, inspired is an understatement. I feel empowered. I'm ready to go make a meal. I'm ready to, I'm a single mom of 2 boys, and I've built an empire for myself. And I just hit 5 years 2 weeks ago in business. So I've done a lot, and to see, to sit next to somebody like you and have this opportunity to really free to pour into me and to pour into all these people, we are so appreciative. It's such a powerful conversation, and thank you so much from us at the Millionaire Talk Show. I don't even know what to say, and that's it's kind of hard. But so much value was taken from that. I mean, mindset, perception, consistency, and I just think it's so important, even to see someone at 71 years old still applying the same things that they initially started with. To this point, it's still working. And so I think that is just such a great example that you're setting and continuing to be a light in a forest. I just want y'all to know, I got my signed copy. I got my signed copy. So thank you again. And I'm just,
no problem,
I'm ready to go eat and go I need to go do, we gotta go do
You dealing, what type of business?
Oh, well, I own a residential commercial cleaning company. I'm also have a business development agency and a nonprofit, the Single Parent Purpose.
You got multiple streams, girl.
So yes.
Outstanding.
And digital products within those streams.
Yeah. Now, multiple streams, you got to be very careful. I mean, if you got one line of income, you can manage that. But multiple streams, what is the thing about multiple streams? Not only do you have to manage it, but you got to manage that over time, because when you got multiple, shifting, transition here, this, that, and the other.
Yep.
And so that's what I'm saying. People have asked me all the time. I am increasing my social media presence. And that's what I'm doing now, because I know, man, how long are you going to do this? And how long are you going to keep it out there? And I didn't want it, what I was doing, to bleed off into what I was doing in the classroom and the like. So handle that process over time.
Yes.
You got them
I'm in
streams,
business
girl.
development, so I'm very heavy on foundation and planning and strategy. So listen, we're already a couple steps ahead of that. Okay?
Wow. Yep.
You got it. But,
Wow.
but you did just say that you want to step more into the social media side. So, with Charles, and we have a couple of our amazing people right in the front row.
Yeah.
With Todd Capital Mastermind, listen, you need to join, because
Yeah.
you need to get your social media, your
Yep.
brand equity.
Oh, yeah.
Listen,
Oh, yeah.
We're going to get you taken care of. Don't worry.
Yep.
If anybody has not,
Listen, that girl from with the brand equity. You been in my class? You about brand equity, girl?
We right here.
Everybody see you. You ain't hiding, girl. We see you.
Listen,
Wow.
we look good, but listen, when we open the mouth, a whole lot of knowledge is
Yeah.
out here. Okay?
Yep.
make sure you guys get Welch Choice. Make sure you guys get Think and Grow at your Black Choice. Make sure you guys follow him on social media. Tap into his website. Make sure you guys know that he feels loved. Shoot him a comment. Shoot him a DM. Sharing what you guys learned today, because I know we all got crazy value out of this conversation. So with that, we're gonna wrap it. My name is Charles Oglesby, also known as Todd Millionaire, with Miss Michelle Welch. Make sure you guys follow us on Instagram at the Millionaire Talk Show, and at Todd.capital, and your Instagram.
I am Michelle Welch.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Peace.
Peace and hair grease. Peace and hair grease.
Yo, I'm about to audit your class. So you might see me again.